fruition. The idea is that it's not just the physical material aspect that's of any importance, really, though it is, right? It is the conceptualization, right, as we will say in philosophy, the ness, the possibility, the form. Right? A chair is something in sort of a final cause sense, right? The chair is something with which you sit, right? The chair is something with which you sit, blah, blah, blah. You can make a very technical definition. But this form isn't transcendent for Aristotle. For Aristotle, this form is directly related to the function of the thing. And this is what the author is talking about here, right? The form of the chair isn't like the form of the good that exists in some transcendental realm. No, the form of the thing adheres within the function that the thing serves. It's because the chair was specifically designed. We'll see this later. Heidegger talks about this in the next section, I think, in great detail. It was very, very difficult for me to get my head around what the hell he was saying, because he did it so masterfully. But I mean, to think at this abstract level isn't an easy thing to do. The idea is that the form of the thing inheres within the function that the thing was designed to serve. Later, we'll see, for those of you whose palate's getting wet like mine, Heidegger will talk about the equipmentality of the equipment, right? So Heidegger will talk about this notion. I'm just giving you a preview because I want you to make a marker, a mental note to yourself in your margins. Heidegger will discuss this Aristotelian concept, right, of form and function in terms of the equipmentality, like the equipment, the hammer. The equipmentality of the equipment really means the function and form relationship, right? So it's important to make a note of that. I jumped ahead big time, but I just wanted to give you that little bit for those of you who are understanding this lecture at a much more advanced level. It's equipmentality. So essence is also viewed from both the standpoint of a final and sometimes an efficient cause. The final cause being the function of the thing, the efficient cause being the construction of the thing, for lack of a sort of gross generalization, though usually he sees it from the perspective of a final cause, right? So that the idea is, I mean, that passage is incredibly opaque, but the idea is, in terms of our understanding, our attempt to make sense of what it is the artist does, we have to recognize that there's work in bringing about the existence of the thing, so that it goes from the mind of the artist into the world, right? It goes from the mind of the artist into the world, but we're really not concerned with the existence of the thing itself, right? We're not interested in the chair. The chair really isn't what's important. It's that we recognize that the chair has a particular function. The chair has a particular function. So in a sense then, in a much deeper level now, the artist is the conduit with which the universe, if you will, and Heidegger is a bit mystical, right? You don't have to reject him for this. You don't, because Aristotle, in a sense, this, and I don't like the idea that mystical has such a negative, or occultist has such a negative, sort of pejorative connotation to it. But there is a sense in which the artist serves as the conduit, not into bringing things into existence. We don't really care about the iPad per se, but the artist really brings new functionality into existence. That's powerful, right? My lecture series isn't about amassing the actual videos. I don't care about the individual video. I don't even know what that means, right? I really don't even know what that means. Okay, so Dr. Campbell has 1,400 videos. Okay, great. What I do, and I've been doing this consciously since I started this, was that I want to bring a new function. I want to transform the way in which education functions. The function of education is changing, right? By these video series, right? By these video lectures, I transform the function in which education is understood. The artist brings function into existence, right? Prior to the existence and the creation of the first chair, there wasn't a functional. I mean, you might just sit on a stump, you might sit on the floor, but there wasn't anything in the world that facilitated the function of sitting. The artist brings function into the world, right? Think about that. Think about that. That's freaking profound, right? That's what this is really what this rather dense and cryptic passage is saying, right? In a very extremely dense sense, but at least one interpretation which is absolutely justified. The idea is that the artist brings function into the world in an Aristotelian sense, because form is function, right? So that when we talk about the purpose, if you will, of the artist, or we try to understand what that thingly element is in the artwork, part of our understanding is conditioned by the function that the piece serves. And the question that we will ask ourselves at this point is, what is the function of art? That's the question. Heidegger doesn't introduce it at this point. We'll address this much later, but you should be asking about the function of art. We understand what the function of the chair is. We're not so interested in the material construct of the chair. I'm not so interested in the material construct of the iPad. It's not the material construct of the iPad that has made Apple so freaking wealthy. It is the fact that Apple recognizes that there is a function that they facilitate the world. They bring in sort of, cyber interconnection, social media, browsing, entertainment on virtual products. I mean, it's the function that's important. So, one little gem that I'll deposit into the universe and offer to those who are unfortunately still watching this very, very boring lecture is this. If you want to be an artist, if you want to be a better artist, you have to recognize that it is not about the end state. It's not about the material product that's of really any significance. It is about the function that that product facilitates in the world. What is my piece? What is my work? And I talked about it in the first sense, and we understand the interrelationship of work and essence. But what is my work contributing? What is it doing? What is it challenging? Right? What is it augmenting? What is it destroying? What is the purpose of my work in terms of its function? Right? In terms of its function. Now, I'll leave that rather ambiguous because it should be ambiguous. I know what my function is. I know what the function of my video series are, independent to what other people think. And this is why I work. This is why I literally work as hard as I want to, because the function is so complex. It requires this level of mania, in a sense. So thus, the second word, which I'm not going to try and pronounce again, serves as a condition with which the first word organizes the properties of a thing. This is just for those of you who really understand it on a very, very abstract, dense level. It doesn't necessarily, this passage isn't really for the masses per se. Without these foundational substrates, these two concepts, being sort of the core of the thing and the subject, the possible existence of this thing, we couldn't talk about the existence of things. Things could not exist, right? So again, that bit is a rather dense and cryptic. Don't worry about that. That's for more advanced readers. You already have an understanding of what's at stake here. We have properties as assembling themselves around the thing, around the core of the thing. We recognize that the core of the thing is itself always already possible, and that always already possibility. The possibility is always already given, if you will. Why? Because there isn't any inherent contradiction in the existence of the thing. So, as soon as we recognize that there isn't a contradiction in the existence of a thing, and we recognize that the thing doesn't yet exist in the manifest world, though it might exist in concept, the only and I guess you can teach this. I'm teaching it right now. There is a way of teaching this, and I mean it's not necessarily me, it's Heidegger, and me a bit. Then you can bring it into existence. You just have to recognize the possibility. You'll need to recognize sort of the efficient means with which you bring this possibility into existence, and you'll need to recognize your role as artist in the production of the function of the work, right? And in a little bit, I'll talk, I think actually in the next bit, I'll talk